All right. Welcome, Facebook, YouTube, or if you're listening on the audio podcast. We are excited you're here. This over here is my friend Noodles.
What's
Uh,
up?
More on him in just a moment, of course. But I want to dig in tonight and start as we do every night that we get to do this conversation as to why we do what we do. My name is Chris Comstock. I get to serve as a pastor down here in Georgia. And I just have the opportunity to interview people, friends, and ministry partners who I've known for a little while about their experiences and life experiences and how they differ from mine. Because if we're honest, everybody has a little bit of a different life experience than we do. And I think it's time for us to be honest that we don't all grow up the same. So, with that in mind, I want to always start with telling you why we do what we do. And there's a passage in Mark 2 that a few months ago just really kind of wrecked me, and it changed everything about the way I thought in a really great way. And I hope it does for you as well through these conversations. I want to share that passage with you. This is your first time with us, even if it's your fifth time watching. It doesn't matter. I want you to hear this passage again. In Mark 2, it says, Jesus returned to Capernaum several days later, and the news spread quickly that he was back home. So the house where he was staying was so packed with visitors that there was no more room even outside the door. And while he was preaching God's word to them, four men arrived carrying a paralyzed man on a mat. And they couldn't bring him to Jesus because of the crowd. So they dug a hole through the roof above his head and they lowered the man on his mat right down in front of Jesus. And this passage has just struck me. And let me tell you why. These guys knew nothing of being paralyzed. They were never paralyzed in their lives, and yet they understood and they wanted to be a part of this man's struggle. They wanted to be a part of this man's hurt and this man's pain, and they would do anything they could to be a part of that. And they wanted to carry him. Even at the moment where he was hurting the most, they took him to help. And I think for us, if we're honest, we don't always understand the struggles or the life experiences that everybody else has around us. But that doesn't mean that we don't need to experience them or learn them from other people. These guys are willing to walk alongside of this paralyzed man, even in his most difficult time, because they understood that they could help him even when he was down. And I think that we, as a nation, as a world, need to be committed to doing the same exact thing. I did not grow up the same way that my friend Noodles did. And yet, I want to walk alongside of him. I want to learn from him. I want to hear his story and his experiences. And I think it's important for us to learn from one another. And so, why do I bring you on the back porch? Tonight in West Georgia, it is rainy. I'm out here. I'm trying to stay dry, 50-50 shot. I might run inside. We'll see. But for now, I'm outside in the rain. Why would I do this? Well, because I believe firmly that you don't invite just anybody to your back porch. You only invite people to your back porch that you want to be there. You bring them through your house. You bring them through your mess. You bring them through your junk. You let them see inside, behind the curtain, if you will. And when people see that, they're able to see your flaws and your mistakes and all the things that you've done wrong, but they're also able to have some of the most intimate conversations. And it's in those moments of intimacy that you're able to truly and genuinely learn from one another. And so I invite people to our back porch because I believe that this is a conversation worth having. That this is a conversation that we should be having more of. That this is a conversation that helps us gain perspective, that helps us walk in other people's shoes, that helps us get educated, and it helps us continue to walk with open-mindedness. And so with that in mind, here's what I've come to be true. And Noodles, you and I talked about this in our pre-show call. I've found to be true this week, especially that things are starting to get quieter. That the hype of the moment is leaving, if you will, and that people aren't talking about it as much. People are, I think, are kind of getting back into that comfortable routine. And there are some. Look, don't let me like negate everybody here. Some are still fighting hard and posting things and being educated, but I'm seeing less and less conversations, and it's discouraging at some levels, but also encouraging in some ways that people are still fighting. So I want us to be able to continue the conversation. I won't be silent on this issue. And I want to continue to have those conversations. So I want to introduce to you guys, to my right and yours, my friend Noodles. That is not his given name, but a fantastic nickname of which only a few know the story of, if I'm not mistaken. I being one of them, on a boat ride in the bay. You told us why you were called Noodles, and I will take it to my grave unless you share that story. So, man, I would love for you to introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about where you're from and what God's doing in your life right now and how you're serving.
Uh, I'm Noodles. Just a kid from Baltimore, really. Um, Lately in my life, haven't nothing much really been going on. I've been, just watching the events unfold and kind of just thinking to myself about what's the next steps and what's actually like what's going on lately, and just trying to get my mind wrapped around it. I'm not a person who's really into feelings, so I don't really feel strongly about a lot of stuff or you know, cry about things that happen. And so, yeah, that's me. I'm just, a normal person.
I
You
love it.
know?
You have been a good friend for, I don't know, since we came up there the first time in 2015. We've
Yeah.
had a lot of good conversations. We've served alongside one another in Baltimore, and you really, I think, and the reason why I feel like people need to hear from you is because we brought a team from South Carolina up there, and you were able to speak into them, which was
Oh
very
my God.
interesting. And I thought, well, you know what? I bet it's just because they're a bunch of rural kids from South Carolina. But then also, we did gym with you guys once a month, and we came up there over the summer, last summer, I believe,
Yeah.
and brought kids up from Glen Burnie, and they were just as timid and almost just as afraid. And the way that you were able to speak into their lives and help them to see how ministry happens, how people are the same and yet different. Like I think you're a man of great words, and I am excited for you to be able to share tonight. So let's dig in just like we do every week here, and kind of help me understand for you, like when was it that you first learned that racism was real? I mean, when did you learn that you weren't, I guess, like what people thought was appropriate or whatever
Yeah.
terminology they want to put to it? What was that for you? What was that experience like?
I don't know. So, at first, I want to say that now how racism is viewed, how it's videos online of just people blatantly being outspoken with their racist ways. It's not always like that. It's just subtle things like them clutching their purse or
Hmm.
crossing the street. And so, I worked for a church, 2015 to 17, and I would catch the bus. So, walking in a majority white neighborhood, black teen, I'm big. I've had several people like I looked a person dead in their face and just watched her like throw her head to the ground and like move closest to the wall to get by. I've seen people cross the street just to get right back on the same side once they get around me. I've literally had people go the opposite direction. So
Wow.
I would say probably 15, 14, 15 is when I've actually started seeing things like this. So it was pretty young, but I was also open minded about the situation. I didn't know what it was, but I also knew it had something to do with who I was. And it's sometimes I don't think it's them. It's mostly that they're racially scared of the image that's portrayed of black men.
Hmm.
So it's not the fact that they're racist or that they don't like black people, but it's the image that they're like taught and shown over and over again. So
That's good.
yeah,
I think it's true. I was listening to a talk today by a guy named Woody Bacham who said for us living in a country that has so much opportunity for education, there is such poor education when it comes to understanding people and cultures and
yeah,
all that. And I feel like you're dead on. Like I think I said it a couple weeks ago that we're often taught how to think about other people based on media, based on songs, based on movies or whatever else. And so I think you're right on. So when you realized this, um, tell me like how did it change the way that you presented yourself? How did it change the way that you approached other people? I
yeah.
mean, did you shift the way that you were just to become, I don't know, I guess more acceptable, quote unquote?
Yeah, so at first it was more of a presentation thing. Not really, but whenever I see someone, I speak, no regardless of who they are or where I'm at. So if I see you, we make eye contact, I speak. And it's this kind of face that white people do. It's like that face. But no, but yeah, it's this face that a lot of black people know. And it's like they'll ball their lips up and they'll just like, and like we know what that face is, and we know it's just the subtle meaning behind it that I don't think a lot of people understand. But I at first I would try to just like say hi or hello, smile a little bit, wave, just let them know like the image that I was given is not the image I carry around with me. So it's worked. Sometimes I've had a lot of conversations and like it worked. Sometimes it was just that nod that I would get. So I at first I was trying to be nicer, not nicer, and then I just like, hey, I'm gonna just be me. I'm gonna speak to you like I always speak to people. I'm gonna wave how I always wave. I'm gonna smile like I always smile. I'm gonna walk like I always walk. I'm gonna talk how I talk, but I'm not gonna change like my demeanor, my attitude. I'm not gonna change stuff because you feel a certain way around me. So
That's good. I know when we were serving alongside you, you were the same way to me that you were to the little punk kids that were running around. Like you were always the same guy. And I think something we talked about earlier. I had a conversation with a buddy of mine. We were driving in downtown Atlanta
yeah,
yesterday, and we were driving through the part of Atlanta where the riots were happening and things were boarded up. And I remember when we came up there the first time, we had driven through West Baltimore with Miss Colleen, and she was like, "Don't get out here. This is not a safe place." And we were saying the same thing. And I think as at least as a Caucasian, like I kind of know I don't get out of this part of the city, or I don't get out of this part of the city. But my heart breaks because I feel like at some level,
yeah,
like Noodles, you've lived in the burbs, in the suburbs, and you've lived in the city.
yeah.
And I just wonder, like, do you feel like, man, I'm safer here or there? Is it harder for you to differentiate, like, this is a safe place for me, or this is
So
not a safe place for me?
yeah, for me, it's not about my safety. It's more of about my calm and peace, really. So when I'm in the city, I'm not allowed. I'm not a loud person, really. So I don't like being around a lot of loud stuff. So it's loud in the city a lot, and it's loud in a lot of neighborhoods. So I don't like it down there. But I'm like, hey, I know most of the people. I know what's going on. So I'm down there a lot. In the burbs, it's quiet. You don't really see your neighbors, but it's quiet. So, and that's just how it is. But the thing is, when you're in the city, I told this to a lot of mission teams. I'm like, when you walk around this corner, you can walk the street all day. They're not gonna mess with you.
Yeah.
I'm like, you wave to them, they'll wave back. You speak to them, they'll speak back. That's just how it is. The moment you become disrespectful, that's when it's a problem. Like we have no problem with it's no problem in the city. Like I told people, most of the murders that happen are personal. It's a lot of people caught in the like surroundings of it and that are hit with collateral. But I'm like, most of the things that happen aren't things that people just stop and say, "Oh, hey, look, let me shoot him. I don't know him, but let me shoot him."
Yeah.
Or, like robberies are unknown, but like, all right, cool. There's robberies in every city, state, town, county, and city. So when it comes to safety, I'm like, am I really safe anywhere but my home, really? I'm like, my comfort zone is my room. So like as I'm now, like I'm in my room. So like I don't leave my room like at all unless I'm going to work. So
That's so good. And you've seen, speaking of mission teams, I mean, you've seen a ton of them come through. We've come through there. You see teams come through there every week from different churches. What is it that you have seen and learned, even just by trying to speak into their lives coming in there? I mean, what have you learned and seen just by being a part of that mission opportunity?
Yeah. So where was it you? Yeah, you bring the South Carolina team up, I believe.
Yeah, we did.
And so bingo night at the homeless park.
Yeah.
That was like one of the nights that I'm like, people are racially scared. I'm like, just for them walking around inviting black homeless people to play bingo, they were scared. I'm like, why are you scared? They're like, oh, I don't know them. I'm like, I don't know him either. Like, they wanted me to walk with him. Like, I don't know him. I'm like, just imagine every last one of them was a different version of me. I'm like, you didn't know me until you met me.
Right.
I'm like, until I introduced myself, until we started talking, you didn't know me. But I'm like, just imagine each one of them is a different version of me. I'm like, that's just how you have to carry it. If you see someone, you speak to them, you introduce yourself. If they're mean, you walk away. If they're nice, continue the conversation. But that was like the beginning of like, I'm like, wow, people are like racially scared. I'm like, they were from the deep, like deep south of South Carolina. I'm like, bro, I'm like, you don't know me. You didn't know me a few moments ago.
Yeah.
But now
Yeah.
you're talking to me like you know me for years. But I'm like, you're scared to introduce yourself to someone you're going to see for probably an hour.
Yeah.
Like, so that was like crazy to me right there. And like
That's
just just talking to them, it just was able to have them shift from these scared little people to like walking around by themselves, talking to people. I'm like, it was crazy because within that 5 minute span of me just explaining, like, just have to view them differently than the narrative. It was able to, transform them from scared little white kids into like white kids on a mission trip. So,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. It's so funny to me because like we did that trip. We also took a team to South Africa this year.
Yeah, I saw that.
And what's funny is, and I'm not calling out our church. Our students are great, but I feel like there's like a shift that happens. Like when we were in Africa, nobody was like, should I trust this guy or not trust this guy? Like they just ran up to the kids, they ran up to the local people and had conversations with them. And I wonder if maybe like as Christians, we should view ourselves more as missionaries in this lifetime,
Yeah.
than anything else, because it shifts our perspective. Like now, I would walk up to you and say, "Hey, I don't know if Noodles is going to heaven or not. I want to have that conversation with Noodles. If he tells me to get away from him and leave him alone, then I'm going to get away from him. I'm going to leave him alone. I don't care if you were white, black, Asian. Like, it doesn't matter. Like you have the conversation. If they tell you to go away, then just go away. Like honor them, respect them. Those kind of things. So that's really good. I know you were sharing me a story about just walking down the street in Baltimore and how people treated you differently. I don't know if you wanted to share it or not, but I put it in my notes because I thought it was a really good story and helped understand kind of some perspective building, if you will.
Yeah. So, the worst thing to do is to walk in the city at night, especially with expensive things. So, on my way back from work one night, probably I was 17, just like catching right, waiting for the bus. I saw this dude, and I'm like, bro, MacBook Pro, all out, hard drive, iPhone, all in hand. I'm like, listen, put it up. I'm like, you're in the middle of the city, like it's 12 o'clock at night. I'm like, put it up.
It's just a random guy. You never met him.
Random. So he just like looks at me and just gives me this nod, like, and I'm like, put it up. So I'm like, I'm trying to explain. So I'm like, listen, I'm like, you see them dudes. So I'm like, they're watching you. They're gonna take it. I'm like, just put it up. And so like he like I feel as though he's got scared at me and kind of like closed it and walked off fast.
Yeah.
And as I look around, I see like people in the car just look at me and start laughing. I just shrug my shoulders. I'm like, it's the narrative that I'm given as a black man that I'm gonna steal him, I'm gonna rob him, I might hurt him. I'm like, if you Google black teens, you'll get mug shots, arrests, like murders. If you Google 3 white teens, you'll get promo videos, photos. I'm like, come on. I'm like, and it's stuff like that creates this narrative that black men are bad or black people are bad. And I'm like, even when I'm trying to help you, make sure you're not going to fit into this, like not going to add on to the narrative of black people being bad, you're still pushing me into that direction. So that right there just like showed me a lot about how I'm viewed in like even in the city. Like that's just how I'm viewed in life right now, and it's crazy.
And you were just trying to help that guy out. You can't walk around downtown Baltimore with your MacBook in your
inner
hand.
city. It was inner city Baltimore. It was Monument Street. Like if you Monument Street, it was the dangerous place in Baltimore. So I'm like, come on, like
smart, guys.
I'm like, you work for John Hopkins, you should be smart. Like,
yeah. I could easily it'd be just as dumb for me to walk down the street with $1,000 in cash.
Yeah,
like,
so
let me count it to make sure that I have $1,000 really quickly.
Yeah,
but it's true. I think you're dead on. Let's shift gears for a second. One thing that you brought up that you wanted to talk about, and who knows, we might make some people angry, but that's okay.
I don't care.
But I think it's important, right? I think it's an important conversation because there is a movement happening right now.
Yeah.
And you specifically said, hey, I want to talk about it. I think it's important to talk about. So let's lean in for a minute. Let's make some people angry, maybe. Who knows? Whatever. And let's talk about it because I think it's important. I think it's a valid conversation that has to be had. And I love your perspective on it. And I love what you had to say about it earlier. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about the Black Lives Matter movement. Uh, People are on polar opposites of this, unfortunately, at most
Yeah.
levels. They're either anti all of it or for all of it. There are very few people that kind of like sit in the middle of it all. And so I know you kind of sit in the middle of it all. And
Yeah.
so let's talk about it. I would love to hear your perspective and what you feel like is a good next step here.
All right. So with Black Lives Matter, I support them. I understand where they're coming from and understand the reasons behind it. Okay, but I feel as though I've spoken with a lot of people from work, church, just myself, just thinking. I'm like, what's the next steps though? I'm like, if we're saying arrest the cops, arrest them. If we're saying uh, change the department, change it. If we're saying more training, okay, training. But we need to focus more on the next steps into building our community. If you say let's take 150 million away from the police departments and defunding them, I'm like, okay, cool. I don't have a problem with the police department losing 150 million of a 450 million budget. Like, I have no problem with that. But if we're going to take money away from something, we got to add it somewhere, right? So if we take 150 million away, I want to know where you want to put it at. If you're going to put it back into schools, public centers, back on to, you know, help people get housing, help people get diplomas, or if you're going to allow them to figure out where it's going to go. I use this comparison where it was a table, and I'm like, are we at the table right now, or are we kind of like in the distance? Because if it's the mayor, the governor, and the president at the table, and they decide that they're going to take 150 million or however much away from police, and they're going to decide where to put it, they could easily put it back into Congress or put it back into the government, and then they're going to get the money right back. But if you say if you take this money away and you put it into these departments, then we're controlling where the funding's coming now. So I don't want people to say like, here's an option. I want us to actually pull a seat up to the table. Or I want them to come to us and bring us their table or come to our tables. Because if I'm the person that's not at your table, but I'm keep giving you suggestions, then you're not listening to my suggestions. That's like an artist hearing another artist say, bro, put me on your song, but you're not sending me no work. You see, like that it doesn't add up because you're the mayor, but I keep saying, hey, if you want to get reelected, do this. They might not want to be reelected, but the person that's running, you might say, hey, we will elect you if you bring us to the table, or we just want to be at the table. So it's just the questions that they're not asking for me. Like, I support them wanting to arrest the police, and I support them wanting to defund them and give them more training. But I want y'all to ask the questions that's needed to further advance society. I've had people at work say, well, they want police to be trained, but you want to defund them. I'm like, the funding for police does not go to their training. I'm like, there's a whole academy for police. That's outside of the budget. Okay. So if we take money away from the police department of Baltimore City, we're not taking money away from the police academy. But if we tell them to incorporate, more hand-to-hand combat in that academy, then it's something different. So it's just stuff that, we just have to bring up and just be more vocal on.
Yeah.
Because right now it's just more optional that people are saying things.
So I think at the end of the day, I was talking to my friend Dana this afternoon. She put a good word on this. It's strategy, right?
Yeah.
Like, what strategy are we creating? Because look, at the end of the day, Noodles, I think you would agree with this. This is a bigger issue than just police reform. I mean,
Yeah.
that's of course an issue we would all love to talk about and continue to see change. I think even they would agree, like we should have more training. All those things are important, but it's bigger than that. Like it's the school systems, it's the housing market, it's the job market, it's welfare, it's all these different things that matter to help build and sustain communities. And that's, I think, at the end of the day, what you're saying. Like, let's not just say we're going to do this, but let's do this with purpose.
Yeah.
Let's do this to say we're going to do it for a reason, because there's a bigger a bigger picture to all of this, and there's a picture of we have to begin to invest back into our community at a higher level. Uh, right? Is that, am I right in saying that? Is that a
Yeah,
good?
no, you're fine. Yeah, you're totally right. It's not. It's yeah. It's all about our development. Really, it's not so much about one thing, but it's about the advancement of everything for us. It's not just about us being, wrongfully detained, but it's also about us being denied a job for, dreads or something like that. So
Mm,
when it comes to stuff like this, I'm like, we just have to be more vocal and actually push for like stuff instead of giving people options, like the stay at home option.
yeah,
You
that's
know,
good.
it was an option to stay at home, or you could just, continue your day.
Right.
So it's stuff like that. Like it's either we're gonna give them options or we're gonna actually like demand results.
Mm, that's so good. That's so good, man. I appreciate your heart in all this because I think it's an important conversation that has to be had. I know nobody. I don't want to say nobody. I think that unfortunately this conversation that we're having right now, oftentimes on Facebook, goes in one way or the other. It goes in you're a terrible, awful person, or I fully support it.
Yeah,
And I hate the fact that there's so much division, especially even within the church right now. Like there is. I was talking to a buddy of mine today. He was like, "Man, my heart is breaking because this is dividing the church at a high level because they don't know necessarily even how to address certain issues,
yeah,
and they're instead inclined to silence for maybe even just protective reasons." And I don't ever see the like, and I'm going to make a bold statement here, and who knows what's going to happen with it, but I don't ever see the New Testament church being silent when it was time for them to step up. Like I don't ever see John and Peter and Mark standing before the religious leaders of the day, going, "We're good." Like they spoke the truth to them, right? They spoke
yeah,
it. Like I don't ever see like Jesus could have just as easily to the woman at the well said, "You're fine. I already forgive you. You're good." But he didn't. Like he called her out. Like he called her out on her sin and
yeah,
walked into it. Like if you are willing to walk in people's shoes, you have to recognize you're going to get a little dirty. You're going to get a little messy because that's what life is. Life isn't intended to be this clean slate you walk through. And I just want to make sure that we understand that the church, its purpose is to speak, not be silent. Its purpose is to stand up, to fight for justice, to fight for love, to fight for mercy, and not to stand on the sidelines and go, "Y'all got this. Like, y'all are good, right? Like we're good." And I get it, man. I get it because at the moment where the church speaks up, it creates an awkward line in the sand of going, "Well, what are your people going to say about it?" And that is all dependent upon what you've been saying about it up until that point.
yeah.
If you're not talking about it, then your people are going to be like, "Why? Where's this coming from?" So as a church, we can't be quiet. We can't be. We have to be. And I'm not saying the black church has to speak out. I'm saying the big C church, the church that claims Christ as Savior, has got to speak. Now I'm sorry, I got on a soapbox. It ain't about me. It's about you.
You're cool,
Tell,
man.
tell me, man.
That is
I want to
sweet.
hear from you some more.
What's up?
Um, Tell me, like, any. I don't know, for you, like experiences that you've had along the way, uh, that have helped shape and mold who you are today. Uh, I don't know if there's anything else you want to share, but I just know that you've had a lot that you share with me. So maybe there's just something you can leave us with that you would say, "Hey, this is a story that helped shape and mold Noodles into the man that he is today."
I don't really know. So my mindset is open. Like I can have a conversation with anyone, but I also want them to understand that we're gonna have two different sides of a story. We're gonna have two different point of views. But when it comes to issues such as police brutality or anything, I have people that always side with the police, and I'm like, bro, if I get stopped right now, I'm 3'10". I'm a big black man. I'm like, I'm scared. Like it's nothing else I can say about that. I'm like, it's too many things that are like it's too much going on right now for me not to be scared. But my mind was shaped off of experience, really. So just for me leaving the country and going to see Kenya, and just for me, like being around different people of different aspects and different races. People from South Carolina, North Carolina, Kentucky, Tennessee, Georgia. Just different people who when I speak to, it's different information, and it's different views. So I just got this kind of mindset where as though bad things will happen. Everyone's not good, everyone's not bad. You can't always be the neutral zone. You either pick a side or you're the bad person, really. So I just try to keep a mindset where I have to just accept life. I used to always cry about dying when I was younger. I used to 14 used to cry every day, like I'm gonna die, and then I realized like, hey, death is inevitable. Like it's inevitable. I'm gonna die, but I have to like do a lot while I'm here. So that's why when it comes to certain things, like I don't have no problem talking about race. I have no problem talking about Black Lives Matter. I have no problem talking about the police. So it's just the way that I've viewed life, and I was able to accept change and accept that things happen, but it's also our responsibility to make sure that within the next year or months or days that it doesn't happen again.
Yeah, that's so good. I think what you're saying is where all of us ought to live. We ought to live in the moment of being willing to listen, to sit back, and to have conversations. Because at the end of the day, that is what shapes you. It's what
Yeah.
molds you into who you are. Noodles. I always like to end by giving people opportunities to grow. I always challenge people to, if you're just starting out in this
Yeah.
conversation, jump in to Be the Bridge, read the book. We're going through it as a staff right now, and our church is great. There are opportunities to grow in that. So if you have nowhere else to start there. Start by jumping into Be the Bridge. But I know you've got some great resources as well you wanted to share. So what you got, man? What can we be reading?
So, I Am Not Your Negro by James Baldwin. That's one of my favorites.
Yeah.
Between the World and Me by Ta-Nehisi Coates. Actually, any of Ta-Nehisi Coates' books, really. They're just like a lot of racial. Boom. There's like a lot of racial books that give you insight into Black Americans' life, really, and that just gives you the information that's needed to understand where we're coming from to the point where it's what can happen to us if we're not a certain way and if we're not viewed this way. Like, it's just they're good reads. So uh I Am Not Your Negro, good book, good read. I love it. It's a short, sweet read, but it's also like packed with information from Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, James Baldwin himself, and it just goes over stories and tells you what has happened and tells you what they've seen and what they've done and talked about. And it's giving you this point of view of America from 1965 from to present. I'm like, I've read a part in this book, and it was still like relevant today. And I'm like, that is crazy. It was from Malcolm X, and I'm like, I read it when I was actually looking for the book. I wish I would have saved that page, but I read it and I'm like, yo, that is so crazy. I'm like, that's literally like you can literally tie it to like 2020 alone. I'm like, so yeah, that's a good book. And anything by Ta-Nehisi Coates, they're like good books. Even James Baldwin too. A lot of his books as well are actually like good books to read. So
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing those. I have just one book, and the only reason why I'm sharing this tonight is because I just started a study uh, with a couple of my friends on the book "The Color of Compromise"
yeah,
by Jameer Tisby, which talks about the church and its complicitness in all of this, which is interesting read. I'm excited to go through it. I've heard great things about it, so take a look at that as well. There are great options, obviously, and also I Am Your Negroes on Netflix as well. If you want to watch the movie, if you're a movie over the book person, I guess you can watch the movie. I would always recommend you reading the book. It's always better than the movie. But if you're lazy or whatever, you can just watch the movie. And I also got a shout out before we wrap up completely. that you're rocking a Nickelodeon shirt on tonight. For those that are just listening, you don't
Oh,
get
that's
the pleasure of seeing it. But my man Noodles is rocking a Nickelodeon shirt like I've never seen before. Man, I wish I could just pull a lever and dump some slime on your head right now, but I can't.
Oh
I'll
man,
bring some up when we come up soon. I'll bring some slime up and throw it on your head. It'll be
can't
fun.
wait to see you, man.
I'm so excited, and I'll say this: like, uh, we recognize that this is not something that's going to change overnight. This is
Yeah,
not something that's going to happen in the blink of an eye. It's a process, and it's a lot of deconstructing and reconstructing our views. And so I want us to remember that this is the reason why we're doing these conversations is because we want to learn from one another. Like the shirt I wear every time we do this, we do believe that equality is greater than division. I don't know if you guys can see it tonight or not. Anyways, we do believe it because it's an important piece of the puzzle. And we have to display humility in our learning. We have to recognize that we don't know it all. We haven't experienced it all. We have to learn from one another. We can either be a product of the change in this world or we can be a product of the frustration in this world. And my prayer is that the people who listen and the people who learn from here will be a product of change, not just for our generation, but for my kids, for your kids, and for the ones that are to come. So, Noodles, thank you so much for coming on tonight. I always encourage people if you are looking for a way to listen and you're not a video person, we always love for you to go check out. We're on all the audio podcast platforms as well. Tomorrow morning we will be there. This will always be on replay. People can share this on YouTube or Facebook. So I just appreciate your time tonight, Noodles. It means a lot to me, man. I will treat you to some food when I come up to Baltimore next on me. Maybe we'll see. No, but I appreciate you, man.
no
I love you.
problem.
I know you, man. Your heart is big, and you love people so well, and I'm thankful for you and your ministry up there. So, thank you guys for tuning in tonight. Appreciate everything, or this morning, whenever you're watching or listening. I hope you guys learned a ton. I'm going to throw up a slide, let you guys know where we are. But you guys have a great night. We'll see you guys next week with my friend Charlie Buitrago from Buitrago. He taught me today. Buitrago from Venezuela and also in South. Now he lives in South Carolina. It's a good one. We recorded it today, and I sweat a lot during because we filmed it this afternoon. So I've got a sweat rag and everything. It is awesome. So, anyways, it's
Oh,
good. We'll see you guys 9 o'clock next week. Here's how to find us. We'll see y'all later.